Good morning from the Atlantic Council's global headquarters in Washington, D.C., and a warm welcome to those joining us from Europe and around the world. I'm Fred Kemp, President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. This is a special event for us. We don't very often get a newly named minister from a newly created ministry in a groundbreaking area of work, but that's what we're doing today. It's my pleasure to open today's conversation with Dr. Karsten Wildberger, Germany's Federal Minister for Digital Transformation, Germany's first ever Federal Minister for Digital Transformation and State Modernization. The organizational decree was signed earlier this month. The ministry's in business for about 11 weeks, the minister tells me. It will take over departments and responsibilities currently held in 6 ministries, and the aim is to accelerate digitalization, and it's also going to, importantly, inherit artificial intelligence matters from the Justice Ministry. So, Minister Wildberger, welcome to the Atlantic Council, herzlich willkommen, and welcome to Washington. It's been 79 days since the new German government came into office under the leadership of Chancellor Friedrich Merz. One of the overriding goals of this new government is to reform and to revitalize Europe's largest economy. Amid geopolitical uncertainty, structural shifts in the global economy, and new challenges to key German sectors, if not its trade-reliant business model overall, the German economy has suffered 2 successive years of slow growth. The digital transformation of Germany's industry, infrastructure, and government will play a key role in the effort to reignite growth and drive the country's long-term competitiveness. To lead that effort, Mr. Wildberger heads up a newly created Ministry of Digital Transformation and Government Modernization with an ambitious mandate to drive Germany's digitalization and ensure Germany is not only keeping pace with innovation, but helping to shape its direction. This is so important not just for Germany, but also for Europe and the transatlantic relationship, particularly in an age of artificial intelligence. As the EU sharpens its focus on competitiveness, its largest economy will play a decisive role in achieving the EU's Digital Decade 2030 and advancing regulatory simplification. In the United States, Mr. Minister, we might call it deregulation, but we'll see in the conversation what comes out. And the new digital ministry scope has the level of ambition to help Germany succeed by, first, modernizing the culture and structure of Germany's public services, digital infrastructure. Second, strengthening government efficiency in public services through initiatives like Deutschland Stack, as well as shaping and implementing international digital policy at the EU. This position completes something of a hat trick for the minister, who has an absolutely fascinating CV. He adds being a public servant at the highest levels to his career as a business executive at Boston Consulting Group, at digital firms like T-Mobile, Vodafone, Telstra Group, E.ON, C Economy. And he has been, as well, he is a theoretical physicist by training with studies at Technical University of Munich, a PhD from Aachen, and an MBA on top of all of that from INSEAD. His appointment reflects a recognition that in Germany, the digital policy requires a mindset of innovation and disruption. And perhaps it needs leadership by someone who is not a typical government bureaucrat. The minister joins us today to explore how Germany is positioning itself to lead in the competitiveness agenda. So, Minister Wildberger, we're honored to host you at the Atlantic Council as part of our Europe Center's transatlantic digital work, and we look forward to your insights. Let me just say one other thing. It's inevitable after your appointment, Minister, that German media has compared you to Elon Musk. I think when you see the minister come to the stage, you'll see he will not be equipped with a chainsaw. In fact, you yourself have said you would work with, quote, respect, curiosity, determination, and team play, and friendly tenacity. So with that, Mr. Minister, we welcome you with all your friendly tenacity to the stage to share some opening remarks before we get into a conversation moderated by Atlantic Council Distinguished Fellow Fran Burwell, who is also a leading expert on these issues, particularly in the context of US-EU relations. Thank you.
So, dear Mr. Kemp, dear Mrs. Burwell, dear Mr. Fleck, and dear esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kemp, first of all, thank you very much for your very kind words, flattering words, I have to say. And it's a great honor to be here with you at the Atlantic Council, an institution that has long served as a vital bridge across the Atlantic. And there's hardly any more fitting place for this conversation in Washington, D.C., a city that embodies leadership, international dialogue, and the power of institutions to shape global rules. Mr. Kemp, you're the, if I may say, the son of German immigrants and a tireless advocate for transatlantic understanding. And your work has helped shape the dialogue between Europe and the United States. And I want to thank you and your team for your continued commitment to this mission. Thank you very much. And the partnership between Europe and the United States is more relevant than ever. In a time of profound global transformation, geopolitically, economically, and technologically, we need strong alliances, and that's something very close to my heart, grounded in shared values and mutual trust. And Germany and the United States are united by a common belief in freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. And when we act together, when we combine our innovative capacity, our economic strength, and our political determination, we can shape also the global digital future in line with our values. But one thing is also clear: to be credible and a capable partner to the United States, Germany and Europe must grow stronger in economic, technological, and strategic terms. And that means also investing in its own capabilities, building resilient digital infrastructures, strengthening its innovation ecosystems, and also take a more active role in setting and working on joint standards, also for emerging technologies. And I would like to also say that our Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, is taking the leadership position, again, that Germany and Europe also needs. And I'd like to stress one more time, the transatlantic partnership with the US is absolutely critical. We consider the US as a dear friend, a great partner, and based also on common values that we share, and they will endure. So I thank you for that. And the new government is also committed to do things a bit differently when it comes to technology, when it comes to digitization, to artificial intelligence, but also state modernization, because we have become far too complex over the many decades. Too regulated, too many structures, too slow in decision-making, and not enthused about technology enough, as I can witness in the US, where everyone is excited talking about the opportunities technology provides rather than the risks that come with it. And that's why the new government took the decision to form a new ministry. It's the first ministry since 1986, and that is pulled together from 6 different places with 2 major goals. One is state modernization, which means reducing complexity, getting a new operating system for the public service, which is a big thing to do and will take time and requires a lot of people working together as a team. And the second one is digital affairs, digitization, which also means a modern state has to be digital, but it goes way beyond that. And let me just outline the headlines, what this means. So on the state modernization, there are 3 big themes. One is cutting bureaucracy, making government more digital. The tech stack is about standards, about modern standards, secure infrastructure, cloud-based with a modern API structure. And also, and that's something we're working on already, using also agentic AI to work through the complexity of the rules that we have created. So that's an exciting part. The second one is that we want to increase efficiency and also reduce the money we spend as a government across the different ministries. without compromising quality. It's often the opposite. Leaner structures produce better quality. At least that's my conviction. And that includes that we will set ourselves target as a government across the different ministries. And our role of this new ministry will be to monitor those targets and measure them. And the third is that we want to invest more in the people who make the state work. Very capable, highly educated, committed people, our civil servants. And with more modern working conditions, flexible structures, and also more performance orientation, so that we attract and retain talent based also on measurable targets, which I think can be very rewarding. And that's, of course, a journey we will do together, because we have a more complex system in Germany. We have the federal level, we have the states, and of course we also have the municipalities. And that will require that the government learns to work, as we call it in business, in a matrix structure. So that's quite a new endeavor, which I'm keen to help shape with a wonderful team, which I'm supported by. So that's the one big thing. A modern state is obviously also digital. And we have defined in the first 10 weeks, and also working on those things very in a specific way, 5 different themes. And I'd like to elaborate just on 2 themes because I think they're relevant for the discussion here. But let me just outline the 5. The first one is infrastructure, fiber, 5G, data centers, compute infrastructure. That is infrastructure. That's something we are pushing forward. The second one is regulation, critically important, especially in the age of AI. And I'm sure this will be a debate just here on stage. The third one is cybersecurity. There is nothing digital if it's not safe and secure. And the challenges are growing every week. With the advance of AI, we will see new attacks, new techniques, and you have to master the technology to actually be able to react and to protect data, protect citizens, to protect countries, to protect democracy. The fourth area is what we call digital sovereignty, a term that is widely used, and everyone understands the term differently. I'd like to give you in a second my definition. And the fourth term is, how do we digitize public services so that the citizens, when they interact with the state, with the government, with the municipality, experience also a digital life, less complex, less paper when they go to the office, the civil servant office. Because the life of people in Germany is way more digital already than people think. Outside the US, we have the highest adoption rates of large language models in Germany. So there is a much different digital experience versus when our people experience interaction with the state. And that erodes trust in democracy. That erodes trust in the capability of a state, and that's why it's super important. 2 things I mentioned very briefly that I'd like to touch upon. One is regulation, the other one is digital sovereignty. On regulation. The regulatory framework of the EU and also the German one is emphasizing very much the risk side of things and not enough the innovation side of things. So that needs to change. There is a conversation we're having in the government to form a final view. I'll give you my personal view, which I'm also very, very clear about. Also in Brussels with colleagues in other European member states that share the view, like France or Poland. We have to change the regulatory framework to enable innovation. It's not the problem, in my view, that we address some of the risks because they also represent values like privacy. The challenge lies in the execution, in the lack of clarity of the regulation. And I think some of the risks that are being addressed are worth addressing. We may not agree on this one, but the real fundamental problem lies in execution matters. Execution is, at the end of the day, everything. And I think we also have to address in a reasonable way the risk side, and it has become way too complicated. With all the different acts that interact, they create a lot of frustration, and it's particularly hard for young companies, for small companies. And it actually favors the established players. But that's something I'm committed to work with everything I have, together with the team, sitting here, to help change that. And that we don't have much time is also clear to me. Definitely after yesterday's visit to this very impressive AI action plan that was just released. So I just want to be very clear that we also aware of the fact that we have to drive much more the opportunity side of things. One more word, because I was many years at the decades at the receiving end of regulation. I would have never come up this way had I had the chance to write it this way, but it has never prevented me from doing a much better job creating digital business models. And unfortunately in Europe also, that is used as an excuse to not join the technological, say, advance or the party. And that's a problem as well, and that needs to also change. And that brings me to digital sovereignty, which is dear to my heart. And what do I understand? What is digital sovereignty to me? It means that we have to use in Europe and in Germany the great talents we have. We have excellent universities, we have excellent research institutions, be it Max Planck, Helmholtz or Fraunhofer, and we have really super talented young generation, older people who are willing to shape something. And we have to use the talent to also participate. We do not just want to rent technology, we also want to start creating technology. And now that's important. That works in partnerships. It can only work in partnerships. And that's good for both of us. Because when we grow more, because we lack the growth by not participating enough, we will grow more strongly together. And that's why I'm also here to say we are very open, not just open, we want the partnerships that we cherish for so many years, and that needs to continue. And we have great conversations with companies like the big tech firms, but not only with American companies, what this means. And I experience a lot of positive feedback when it comes to, yes, please, you have to do more. And I think that is a great opportunity. We just don't want to be a bystander, but it works in partnerships. And under digital sovereignty, my hope and my dream is that it's not a dream, I think it's realistic. In 4 years from now, we'll see in Europe and Germany 5 times, 6 times as many startups, and many make it more through the different stages. The beauty of AI is this can happen very fast. You set the example here every year or which companies you create here in the US in this spirit. But we have to use also our talents and work in partnerships. That's digital sovereignty for me. So that's the program for digitization. I won't bore you now with how we want to make the experience when you change your car plate in a digital way. That's our job, and we are working on it. And what we will do on cybersecurity, how we create the German stack, work on digital identity, not just for Germany, also for Europe. So there's a big program laid out, and we are after week 11 in operations mode, and we're also going to work in the ministry a little bit differently. So it's a big program. I know the expectations are high. Yes, you will not see me with the chainsaw. Whilst I understand some of these comparisons, they are completely, not worth mentioning, because I think, as I always say, I mean, Elon Musk always called the modern version of Edison. And I have a lot of respect for Edison, what he has created in terms of business models and innovation. And that would be foolish to compare. I still believe that it's critically important in the age of AI and in the age of technology advance that we take the people with us. Because it does create some friction for societies. It poses some challenges on democracy, and we need to find the right answers to that. And I think it's much more powerful to make the changes, but have the conversation and take the people along and lead them through that period that can be very exciting, but at the same time, every change comes also with its challenges. But I'm very much of the view, and it's great to be here in the US. Every time I land here, you smell the spirit of possibility. We have the German words, which is problem. Every problem is an opportunity, and I really hope that we can tackle opportunities, problems together as partners, as friends, as we did in the past, and it's great to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Wildberger. That was really, I think, an outstanding introduction to your ministry. And I think that's something that those of us who have watched digital policy in Germany and Europe, this is a really exciting time because, after all, we've seen digital ministries in many of the Central European states and in other states. And so it's great to see everything come together in Germany, and best of luck with your endeavors.
Thank you.
Germany actually has a reputation of not being a digital powerhouse. Hesitations, or I should say slow uptake of cloud among businesses, not as much uptake of AI, and like many countries, including the United States, a skills issue. What is you've worked in a variety of businesses, and how do you see these issues? Why do you think German businesses have been this way and German citizens have been this way? What does the ministry plan to do, and do you have some benchmarks for success?
I think Germany, in terms of digital adoption, is further advanced in many ways, especially if you think about the big industrial companies like Siemens that actually have become also largely a software powerhouse. Yeah. If you take infrastructure players like Deutsche Telekom, which is one of the most valuable telcos in the world now, has also become very much, say, a software powerhouse in many ways. And we have great examples of those. That said, if we look at the growth that has been created, just count the Magnificent Seven in the US, then one has to be honest and say, well, we have not participated. We have not managed to create digital pure plays, apart from SAP, which is a great company, but a digital pure plays on a global stage. And why is that? I personally think, that's my personal opinion, and that's why I say I will put a lot of focus on our startups. We have looked after very much what we already have, what we are strong at, and we're trying to protect that. And that's a good thing, and I'm not saying one shouldn't do that. But if it comes at the expense of creating room for the new, creating room for the innovation, then this becomes an issue. And I think for too long, we have enjoyed, I would say, the dividends of great business models. But now we realize that a lot of established business models get challenged by new intermediaries, new players, customers are changing customer behaviors. And that requires then a different type of leadership. So I think the answer has to be, the true innovation that no one expects usually comes from new companies. And even the big companies here, and with all respect, Google, it's not that old. It's not as old as a chemical company or something. It's 30 years, something like that. And it's amazing what you can do in that time frame. So I think the mindset has been, we lost a little bit the trust in the innovation power of the new, also challenging established businesses. And I think that tension, challenging existing business, creating space for the new, holding seemingly two opposing views at the same time, is something we have to get better at. We call it, some people call that cognitive dissonance. And sometimes important in a cognitive dissonance situation, you have to hold both things together. And I will definitely focus a lot on, say, the innovation part.
So you've mentioned startups, and I should say that we also would welcome very much questions from the audience, online as well as here. And online, go to askac.org, please. But you have really, in your opening remarks, stressed startups and their role. And you've also stressed the burdens that regulation can put on those. And yet, one of the debates in the EU right now in terms of its competitiveness is about financing for scaling up. Is that a challenge, or is it regulations that are the real challenge for startups when they start to scale, in your view?
Well, the liquidity of the market and the financing part is a big challenge in Europe. I mean, we are quite good in seed financing. I think that's could be better, but that's, I think, less of a challenge. But when you want to go through the growth phase, then we see the lack of capital. And also when you see government spending, the leverage that this creates for private investments is not at the same scale. And that has a lot to do with, of course, how you also fund pension funds.
Yeah.
That's a long-standing opportunity in Europe, which we haven't solved yet. But I think we have to definitely make a step change in this direction. At the same time, what we're experiencing in the last, say, 6-7 months, there is a growing trust in the economy in Germany. There are some very good signs, and let's not underestimate the psychology. Germans are very prone to that one. And so we have a tendency to sometimes see the glass half full, but I'm much more enthused by the capabilities. And I'm also sure we have foundational everything in place to get back into the position that we should have because of the capabilities. But we will have to work also on the financing side. That said, there is also more capital coming in, and there is a growing interest. And we see also in numbers, if you just see how many startups and hubs are evolving. Take the Munich hub, is one of the biggest in Europe. We have in southern Germany, around Max Planck, Fraunhofer, a great, we call it our silicon kind of approach, which is very, very powerful. We see it in West Germany, around the University of Aachen. There are hubs, ecosystems evolving that are actually very, very powerful. And that dynamic we have to build on. And I also think that just reestablishing, let's take agentic AI, we can reimagine every single industry, all the processes with a different approach to automation, away from traditional programming, but using agentic AI to do this in a much more powerful way. If we unleash that possibility, we would not just help existing businesses, but we would create enormous growth potential also on the startup side who can do that. So I think I can count many more arguments why it should work than why it shouldn't work.
So this all requires a lot of money from government as well. And especially when you're talking about data centers, infrastructure, which you mentioned quite a few times in your opening remarks. Do you have the resources available to your ministry, or at least that your ministry can influence the finance ministry to provide? And what's the scale of what we're talking about in terms of the German budget?
So Germany has basically taken the decision to invest heavily in 2 areas over the next 5 years. On military spending, on defense. And that, by the way, also has a lot of spillover on technology. You should know from DARPA, you know much better. So, and the other one is infrastructure. And we probably have underinvested in that space for too long. And it's very important that we address also the long-term opportunities by infrastructure investment. And there are some very, very good plans to do that. And that includes, by the way, infrastructure for data centers. And the EU is committed to build 5 gigafabs for the development of also foundational models, if you like. And that is, of course, not a comparison to the gigawatt numbers that are here in the US. But nevertheless, it is quite something, and is the beginning, could be the beginning and should be the beginning of a good dynamics. And as soon as successful, and will create more demand, it will attract more capital. And I think we need to manage that the public funding is backed more by private money. And if I take the applications, whereas the process has started for the gigafabs, in Germany we have 6 consortia that have applied for a gigafactory. So we have 6 companies, for instance, who say, well, we can do that. And we're actually operating already on a research level. I have to say, the 4th largest, fastest supercomputer, also most energy efficient, is in Jülich. So we have actually great examples where we actually master the technology and also the engineering. Now it's about putting it on a different scale. And of course, we learn from the US, and the great news is that we do this in partnership. So we do this in partnership with American companies. And that's why I say we have that investment. And I think once we have the momentum, more investment will follow also from the private side.
Okay. I wanted to turn, if you sound pretty confident about investment and about the financing being available, but I wanted to turn to regulation. At the EU level, there is a Data and AI Development Act that is expected later in the year, as well as a digital omnibus that will look at some of the past digital legislation. We all know how many sometimes competing reporting obligations can be part of EU legislation. What is going to be your stance on these things? And in particular, I would say that you also mentioned digital sovereignty. There is clearly a lively discussion in Europe about which countries or companies from wherever they're headquartered can be, how they would be treated. And we've seen debates over the EU cybersecurity standards and things of that. Government procurement has become a larger part of that debate. How do you anticipate working on the EU level to ensure that your very nice words about partnership can be a reality?
Well, on the partnership side, 75% of cloud infrastructure is run by great partners, the hyperscalers in Europe. And we see billions of investment coming from them in Europe. So despite the current regulatory framework, there is great, actually, business still to be had. That's a fact. And the reality is, when, from a European standpoint, the complexity of the regulation can be mastered by those who are actually very capable, and favors actually those who also at the same time say, well, we'd like to have a simpler. My view is it's too complicated, as I said, and that was going to be a process. Now we have to dissect what we mean by the complexity. There are different areas that we have to work on. If you take the AI Act, the latest, say, regulation that comes into play, we're now at the latest stage of enforcing the latest step in, also fines for large companies, etc. They're currently having debates. Are we truly ready to do that? Because is the regulation clear enough, or does it lead to frustration? That's a conversation we're having, very explicit, between different member states. The government still has to form their own opinion. I personally am very vocal about that. Also talk to the commissioner. Do I know what the outcome will be? No. At the same time, we have a national obligation to introduce the governance body. And the team sitting here is doing it in the most least invasive way that is possible. That is not good enough, but it is a step. Secondly, we'll use the omnibus discussion to have a full review on the AI Act, but also how the different acts work together, be it on privacy and be it on the DSA, DMA, and the AI Act, and of course the NIS 2, which is the cybersecurity and new regulation coming. The thing is, we also have to have a conversation, in my view, about what is regulation trying to address? Are there risks that, from also the lens of the people, are worth discussing? If I'm a customer and I have my data given to someone, do I want to know what happens to them? Should I give my consent? In online, do I want to know at some point, was content created by an AI? Is it true or not? Do I want to differentiate a deepfake? When someone is part of a deepfake, can I do something about it? And if I have a platform that is very capable but also powerful, what can they help to enforce that? Personally, I think these are very valuable questions to have. The challenge is, does the translation of the regulation, how to enforce that, has to be super complex and unclear? No, it should not. So I think the challenge is that regulation has become too much worked out in silos. I want to do this, so I write it up. But boy, you have to think about implementation.
Yeah.
That matters. And I think this is where my main criticism lies. If I read it, I said, what does it mean? How do I do that? And how it then works is you take a bunch of lawyers and pay them a lot of money, and they write a lot of stuff up and say, you're okay, and we have a new industry. That's not the way. But I still think we should have a discussion about, is there underlying values? Is it worth addressing? And I personally think that there are some universal things that stand for individual rights, for safety, for the need for democracy. And the question is, how do we implement it in a best way? And I will try everything I can, and I will be in Brussels whenever I have the chance. And we were discussing here on the way that we do that. I have great supporters here, and we'll do that. But it's going to be a process.
So we have a question from the audience, a couple questions on 5G and also one on China. And so I'm going to put those together and ask you, because you just mentioned risks, how are you seeing the role of China in terms where Germany has had a long-standing economic relationship? How do you see the role of China in the digital infrastructure of Germany, and what are you doing to address that? How does it go beyond 5G as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think, as I think it holds to everyone, that the relationship with partners is sometimes also under review. And I would say 15, 20 years ago, it felt a bit differently, and then maybe the goals of China may have also changed. Our goals have to then also be adjusted, etc. And I think it's a perfectly normal discussion one needs to have, is when we have infrastructure, how secure is it? How independent is it? Can we manage it at all times? These are very important questions to have. And I think no one can disagree with that, say, first principle question. And I think there are some very fair questions to be asked in infrastructure. And there were times when special chips hardware was deployed in networks. And we know that this can be used in many different ways. And I don't think necessarily that without very, very clear commitments and also safe environments, that this is a situation that should remain like this. This is my personal view. The question how to deal with that going forward, there is a forward-looking path when you implement new things, and how do you deal with legacy, and that's an ongoing debate. And every country finds its own answer to this one. And I know Australia, when I was there around 2012, they found their answer. And different jurisdictions on this planet, maybe also in parts here in the US, have during that time found different answers. And it's, of course, a normal course that we have these discussions, and we have to also represent our interests. And as I said, infrastructure is critical, and we need to protect this. This is my personal view, and we need to find a practical way, and always open to good trade. And just to be clear, I have a lot of respect for the Chinese, what they're doing. And they're very innovative. They have amazing production capacity. And let's be also clear, innovation follows production over time. And that's also what happens. So we have to also here find our own energy again to produce here, to manufacture here. And I think it's healthy competition, but this one is imminent. And on 6G, was that a question, or 5G? No,
well,
maybe
the
not.
transition from 5G to 6G is...
It's very important that we understand that with 5G, but especially with 6G, we will see a complete dismantling of hardware and software. So software-defined networks and an optimization also with the AI layer, where traffic is optimized, energy is optimized. So example, with a 6G network, you are in a football stadium or American football or soccer, and the stadium is full, and all of a sudden there is an accident in the area, and then you want to prioritize the vehicles for the ambulance or the police. So you just change a bit of network settings, and all of a sudden those devices get prioritized. So you can actually manage the whole network with a switch. In the past, you bought a box, you have everything included with the software on top, and you have to do all the fiddling around. So you have a dismantling of the different layers. And that requires a lot of standards. And the vast majority of patents is in certain other jurisdictions. And I have to say that Europe and the US, we should better work together on this one and make sure that we build on that. So I see it as a challenge, but I see it, what's get me fired up, it's also an energy boost, because it means maybe we have now a reason to get things done. Mm-hmm. And it's a wake up. And that's how we should see it, because we have got the talent, and I think that's what we need to do.
So I understand that you were at the release yesterday of the new U.S. AI Action Plan. It's a different approach than the EU AI Act. But what do you see as far as possibilities for U.S.-EU cooperation in AI, cybersecurity, and digital generally, other than maybe standards for traffic lights, which would be great. So how do you see that cooperation?
I think it's a critical cooperation, and obviously that the US, with all the foundations and the technology leadership that you have, you play a vital role in providing most important infrastructure. And I think on the one hand, I see this as an opportunity to do more business together. Okay. When Europe is more active, we will also see more growth. That's good for America as well. So it's a very rational, say, economic decision to do trade in this way and to cooperate. At the same time, we should also put the best minds together. I think humans still matter. It's not just the machine. And work together. And let's not forget, what connects us is a deep down underlying conviction based on values, heritage, and that is important too. If we define together an AI that represents the values that we want to represent in the Western world, that also represents freedom. Let's not forget, a language model is trained on the collective knowledge, including the values that's underlying, implicit, explicit in it. That's a very powerful thing. And we want to make sure that the technology serves humans. And that's why it's always better to have allies to create that. And imagine we have that, we create this together, we contribute our part, and with all the admiration what America is doing and creating. But I think it's a win-win situation. And I think what I've learned yesterday, the leadership mindset, the conviction that the US creates the standard is something for me, I have to say, from a positive point of view, thinking about possibilities, the leadership mindset is fantastic. And I want to use this again as another wake-up call to say, hello, let's use our talents to join that in partnership, and I think we can both be better off.
Minister, thank you very much. This has been a very illuminating conversation. I think it is very much a shift in Germany, and one that we will be watching. I think digital ministries are an innovative and exciting type of government shift, and I look forward to someday in the United States we'll have a digital ministry.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and have an excellent visit to Washington.
Thank you.